coaches, have you ever felt a situation when maybe the athletes were pushing your buttons, but were they really? Is it their responsibility, or is this about our coaching craft? So what happens when an athlete's behavior or a situation that you find yourself in exposes your weakness as a coach? How do we roll with that resistance? How do we become aware of our state, be self-aware, and improve our coaching in action? It's episode 43 of the Don't Tell Me, Show Me podcast. Right, Mark, you've heard from two, I think, clients this week who wanted us to discuss this topic. So how do we respond? Like, in that moment, so can you describe the situations that you think this comes up? Because this is an uncomfortable episode, because to listen to this is going to require some pretty deep thought.
So it's super common. Often coaches may not be aware of it in the moment because they're not doing the reflection process. So sometimes you might get athletes that in the moment they wind you up, or you might avoid, or you think this is going to be uncomfortable. And we have discussed that in the past, where this comes into, now you've had an interaction live with an athlete and you don't know how to respond. So I would say that we talk about the bandwidth of coaching craft. This is what the difference between great coaches and average coaches is. In that moment, there's a barrier that's come, or a blockage, or an avoidance of an action, whatever it may be, or they've come up with an excuse, have been dismissive. Is how do you respond in that moment? So if I talk about great coaches, they've got that craft to go, right, I'm connected, bang, and they start the response back, which we'll get into. An average coach that's positive, they may go on, they're thinking, I'm not sure how to resolve this now. They'll finish the session, then they reflect. They may be able to work it out themselves. They might speak to another coach or a support network, and they go, right. And then they will definitely loop back round before the next session and go, can we just have a chat about that quick discussion we had? And they'll close the loop.
I don't think that's an average coach. I think that's a good coach. The first coach you described as exceptional. I think the second coach you're describing there is that's still good coaching.
Yeah, I'd say average in the positive sense of, if the coaches I'm dealing with, you're quite right. The barometer of where average is. The lesser coach, which may then be your perceived average coach, Simon, is they won't know what to do in a moment, and they'll dismiss it consciously or subconsciously, and they won't follow it through. So it will still be there. And it may be that athlete's thinking, right, I've got away with that. That's something I didn't want to do. But the problem hasn't gone away. Something that you've agreed with or without clarity we can get into. But something there is a barrier that you're in your head going, that's not what I want or what we've agreed or what we need, depending where it is. But now I'm letting it, I've moved away from it. I haven't dealt with it. It's not been effective. So it will still be there. I call them the weeds in the garden. That's the rot that you haven't sorted out. Now, what's important, Simon, and I think you connected with that in the intro, is this is no one's fault.
Yeah.
So, yes, you might get what I call assassins in the PDS way of talking, and they are overt disruptors. You may get them. However, most of the time, it's not that overtly disrupting. They've got to a point of discomfort now. There's something they don't want to do that's different to what they might do. Now, they might think that's going to expose me, that this is inner thinking. It may be, well, this is a level of discomfort I'm not ready to go for. Can I avoid this? Or something I haven't done that I agreed I was going to do, so I'll come up with an excuse. So it may not be deliberately sabotage, but there's certainly some sort of barrier there that may be quite shallow or could be deeper. As a coach, if it's quite shallow, it's how do we deal with it in that moment? And if we can't deal with it in the moment, how do we loop back to make sure we've resolved it so it's not going to linger? I think this is the important bit about this episode.
When I think about times when I've felt that real sort of discomfort, particularly in action, it's almost always for me about an interaction with another person. It's that nagging feeling, did I get that wrong there? And the major discomfort comes from it's like a disturbance in my state. If my state was not stable to begin with, then that's when I would be in that sort of average category. If my state's good to begin with, that's when I can be in that good category where I might loop back to it. And if I'm having an exceptional day and I've slept well and I've had a coffee, then maybe I could be, I could be at the top level. But for me, like my buttons get pushed by interactions with players where I felt like maybe I can't handle this situation in the moment.
Now, there's two layers to that, Simon. So there's one where you may, if I interpret this correctly, when you're in your best state, you're present, you're in your flow, those type of interactions you've got a response for in the moment. There may be a coach, and I've experienced this many times, and this is not uncommon. A coach will still be in their flow, but they haven't yet got the depth of craft to know how to effectively respond in that moment. It's kind of it's not pressing the button, so to speak, but it's going, I'm not sure what to say now to reply in this moment. Now, if where I talk about an average coach is what I'm talking about a competent, they'll loop back and seek advice and they'll get back round to it. They won't avoid it. They won't dismiss it. They won't forget about it. So there may be coaches that this is where that variation is, that even if they're in a good place and they're in flow, they still don't know how to respond effectively. There may be coaches that they're so mood orientated that actually they're impatient, or they don't want to be present in that moment because they want to move on and get their content done, so they're dismissive. They might have the ability to have the effective interaction, but because of their state, their mood, their impatience, their expectations, they're choosing to avoid it, which again for me would be unacceptable in most cases, unless there's something I would have to seek to understand as a mentor. So I'm interested in, why did you avoid that? And they may come up with something. Okay, so how are you going to deal with it now? So there is that element of, I don't know how to do these things, and the element, I know how I should interact now, but I'm choosing not to, either because of my mood or because of judgment in that moment.
So when is it useful and when is it not useful to respond to a situation where my coaching weaknesses are exposed and I feel discomfort by telling the players that I'm feeling discomfort, that I'm feeling exposed here, that I might not have the answer? Is that kind of openness and transparency, is that going to work every time? Is it not going to work? Do I want to show players that I'm not competent in that moment?
I think there's a balance to that. Is one is, are you developing the right culture? If you're in the right culture, you may use different words, but if the culture is built in the way that it needs to be for this effective coaching, effective interaction, you may not say those words, but you could definitely say, I don't know the answer to that now, but I'm going to get back to you on that. Let's not close this door. Let's loop back round. I'll reach out after this. And we don't have to get into it now, but we will get into it. And you may not even say, I don't know the answer to this now. It says, but go, hey, let's loop back in this after the session. Let's catch up. Now that can happen anyway, contextually. That can be in a match or in some high pressure loading. And you're thinking, judgment wise now, it's something we look like at the time to interact, to get your buttons clicked into this is going to take too long. So in this moment, I'm going to say, right, let's catch up with this. It's important. I don't want to avoid this, but let's move on now. But we're definitely going to catch up on that and fist punch, connect, and then you get into the session. In matches, situations, that's definitely going to be 99.9% of the time. That's what you're going to do because you don't have time to get through that. But if we've done our job right within our pressure loading in practice, we would pick those things up in practice. There wouldn't be surprises in matches. But again, in practice, that may be, there's a lot going on here. This would be a bit of a time pirate. So in those moments, you'd say, hey, that's something we need to speak about. Let's catch up after the session, or can I give you a call about that? I think that's important. Let's catch up for a one-to-one. And then it's the close, but I haven't locked the door. I've just closed it in this moment. We're going to get looped back into it. And that's the variation different if it's right to move on. But often in practice, we're avoiding that because we don't know what to do.
Mm. Yeah, I'm reminded of a quote that has really helped me. It's from Brene Brown. She's talking about leadership, and she says, I'm not here to be right, I'm here to get it right. There's so much pressure on coaches to be right, to walk in the gym and everything you say is right from the beginning. I'm in front of my team, everything I'm saying is right. There's so much social pressure that maybe we're not always aware of to just be right at the beginning. It's quite hard to show vulnerability, but in Brene Brown, in her world, for those that aren't familiar, she's a researcher on shame and vulnerability, all over various podcasts and YouTube. She talks about vulnerability as a strength. That actually admitting I might not have got that right. Like in my experiences, whenever I've had to come back to a situation with a relationship, starting with the player by acknowledging what I could have done differently or what I got wrong in that moment, etc., really, really helps, because that athletes don't get that very often. But that pressure to be right just causes, in my experience, just causes me to behave in ways that I sometimes regret later, because I can feel myself being defensive in those situations.
There's that difference between knowing that no one has all the answers, but being really clear at that from day one when you're coming into a new team. But I'll share if I believe it's right, but I'm really always interested in your opinion as well, because there may be more than 3 correct answers right now. It may not just be wrong or right. And that's that point we've shared on other podcasts about, okay, so what are you seeing that I'm not seeing? What options have you got? But that's part of the interaction where you're not thinking, I need to stand up here and look down at you. I need to be the knowledge oracle, because you're saying, no, I will have stuff that you don't know. And we talked about in previous podcasts, you may be working with some senior ex-international players that are far more knowledgeable than you are. And they're near their twilight zone. They've come back into the club areas. They just enjoy playing and performing. They know more than you in that area. But you shouldn't think, oh, then I can't coach you, because you go, well, actually, I'm coaching the team. So how can I connect the team in those elements? So I think that's one element. But the other element that's so important, particularly for this podcast, is knowing in those moments where I feel I'd like to be better, in those moments when something responds to me, an athlete responds to me, and I don't know how to respond back to be effective, I want to increase my skill in that area. That, I think, is the important thing to discuss here.
Yeah, it's the areas we avoid that point us to the areas that we need to work on, isn't it? Because there's something about the subconscious brain that just takes you away from discomfort, takes you away from something that might cause suffering.
Yes.
There is something about the lizard brain, or the cave coach, whose job it is to keep you alive, and they take you away from those kind of moments. It takes a lot of energy, in my experience, and maturity to take that moment and turn it into a way to get better as a coach.
Well, that's about future-proofing yourself, isn't it? That's where I think Alan's a great role model for that. Is like a sponge. He doesn't steal from people. He just wants to keep adding to his understanding. And okay, well, how could I integrate that and challenge it? Is this better than that? Can I adapt? And coaches, athletes, managers, mentors, teachers, that's what we want them to do. So if you're now spotting there's a trend that when this moment arises, I'm not sure how to respond to it, then that's where you need to be proactive to go, well, actually, what can I add here that's going to make me more confident, to give me some options in this moment? And then we're asking the same attitude we're asking for an athlete. When an athlete to pursue excellence in a moment, if you reflect and go, there's something I'm missing in my attitude, my state, my scanning, my judgment, my tactical understanding, my teammates, then I'm going to put a focus on it to improve in that area. I'm not going to try everything at once. I'm going to commit to this. So for a coach listening to this, and I think we should get into some great examples now, is what causes it? How could we reduce it from happening? But then when it does happen, what could we do in the moment? And then if we can't do in the moment, how do we need to loop back? I think they're the 3 elements that actually eliminate or reduce some of these struggles within coaches.
Yeah, I can offer an example where I've felt agitated and a little bit dysregulated in hindsight when a player has behaved in a certain way, and it can be something small. It can be a bit of body language or a tone of voice. And if I've got unresolved issues with that athlete from earlier on, from weeks ago, or it's been building the whole season, then it's almost like a lens now that I'm seeing that athlete through. Like it's interference. Their behavior reaches me, but in between is my layer of interference. Whereas another athlete could do that exact same behavior, not quite touch the line, but they've got a track record or a history with me of touching the line. So I'm going to let that go. So sometimes we're in this awkward situation when you're coaching, when there's two very similar behaviors by two different athletes, but one of them pushes my buttons and the other one doesn't.
Yeah, I'd say that's you challenging yourself to am I consistent here? And then, I mean, if we get into those three elements, what could I do before to reduce and prevent, and then the middle, then at the time, and then what can I do after if I can't at the time? So if I just share, and this will link back to the last few podcasts, is your preseason fit for purpose? This links into that. So first question we need to ask ourselves, if we're seeing something that we believe is unacceptable and we have to do an intervention, is the first question you need to ask yourself is, have we pre-agreed it? Have an invisible expectation here and I'm seeing it, I'm unhappy, I'm having a bad day, I'm more critical now than I was yesterday when I had a good day. Well, that's on me, but I've got to nail myself down to what have we pre-agreed? Now, here's where the challenge can happen. If we are attempting to put something new in, and this is where pre-season is so important. So the rule of three, as example, the PDS rule of three is one itself, managing state, making good choices, committing to them, reviewing, choice execution, commitment. And then if I'm struggling, I reach out to someone else. So rule of two is if I'm seeing someone struggling or making a wrong decision, execution, I can reach out, have an effective impact. And there needs to be that process. They're accepting it, acknowledging it and acting on it. So if we introduce the rule of three and we go, that's a great idea, but we kind of introduce it because we think might get a few challenges here. So I'll kind of share it, but I'm not going to really ask them for feedback. I'm not really going to go for it because I might get some obstacles coming back. So I'll just kind of share it. This is a new way we're going to do things.
I've
shared it. But what I haven't done is done it as I should do, and that's why I've got those working throughs in the members area is, guys, I want to share this with you, but I want you to connect with what will this give us in the season? If we're effective at this, what will it give us? And when we're not, how has that impacted us in the last season or the seasons before? So now they make the correlation connecting. So, okay, so does everyone see the value in this? Understand the discomfort of it? So which of the key areas do we feel, once you've explained it, do we feel that we need to improve in? And you go through the points at 1, the points at 2, and then your role at 3 is not to keep chucking the answers at you, is I step in when there's a bit of a gap. But if we can work it out at 1 and 2 more effectively. When we get that level of clarity, then we say, okay, we're all getting it. Let's work through it. This session is about understanding it. And then we get into understand we're going to regress. Understand there's going to be times when you don't want to do it. So let's agree permissions. If we agree we're going to commit to it even when we don't feel like it, when we don't, what permissions are we giving each other and what permissions are you going to give me? So they're the future proofing. We are loading it now, and then we practice relentlessly. They get to a timeout 2 weeks later in practice, and we're just going, okay, on the whiteboard, rule of 3, yes or no. Before we earn the right to talk about the technical tactically, the element, the glue, we've said, how are we doing? And if we're not there, let's discuss it. So I'm keeping it alive, I'm relentless. So when we're like that, and now someone has dismissed someone that's given them effective information on the pitch, on the court, now I'm in a strong position because now I can call them over for a one-to-one. Goes, talk to me what happened over there, Jennifer. And Jennifer says, well, he talked to me in a tone I didn't like. Okay, well, was it effective what he said? Well, I don't care. I don't like the way he spoke to me. Said, remind me what we agreed in acceptable and unacceptable within the way someone speaks to you. So that framework we've mentioned on other podcasts, unacceptable would be poor tone, can't control how it's being said, and the information is blame, there's no solution. That would be unacceptable. Acceptable is actually they're sharing an effective solution, but they may not be able to control how they're communicating it. But it's acceptable if it's like that, I'm going to accept it. Exceptional would be I can adjust my communication style for the situation and the information I'm given is solution-based. So in this situation, we go, so remind me what we agreed acceptable and unacceptable was. That athlete, Jennifer, then has to say, well, sharing the effective solution, but it may not be able to control how he's communicating. So in that situation, Jennifer, acceptable or unacceptable. Now Jennifer says, acceptable. Okay, so now you know it's acceptable. Fantastic. So what are you going to do next time when that comes up? They share with the great, show me, you're back in. Now, you could only do that because you had clarity. Imagine now you've kind of introduced it, then you forgot about it for a few months, and now Jennifer's done that. Now you pull Jennifer over and you go, Jennifer, talk to me what happened over there. Well, he just shouted at me and I didn't like it. Now I'm thinking, what do I do now? Now I'm stuck because we haven't got a pre. So now when I say, well, what did we agree? She goes, I don't remember. You mentioned something in pre-season, but we didn't agree anything.
Yeah.
Now I'm stuck. So one of the areas we've always got to look at, please go back to, is your pre-season fit for purpose? And even the attitude and the technique episode next to that, is we've got to prime ourselves into, are we setting clear, if we want to introduce something new, are we spending time to say, why are we doing it with the athletes? The value of it and the impact if we don't, connected to the type team we want to be, whether that's, kayaking, golf, team sports, makes no difference. They need to see the value and understand there'll be discomfort, and then you start layering it in with the what ifs, with the UAEs, the framing of what that looks like. Then when we do that, then someone regresses, we've got a point of reference of agreement. And we've said it will be difficult. We said we're going to regress, but we have the permissions where we step in. So now imagine in the moment, shall I give you an example in the moment where it's happened recently? So I'll give you two. One is, I'll do one at a time. If you want the other one, let me know, Simon. One is, one of the elite teams has introduced the performance profiles that we've mentioned in the past. And they're getting through them all because it's in season building up to the World Cups. So one of the athletes, they haven't yet done that with. And then they've approached the athlete and said, really want to get through the performance profile. Would you be up for just going away and sharing your scores with the headings? And they may ask them to come up with, here's the headings we've got. If you want to add one or two, please do. So the athletes come back and said, I know I don't need to do that. I know what they are already. I don't need to go through that. But there's an avoidance there. So in the moment, the coach wasn't sure how to react in that process. Now, remember, if we really understand the value of doing it, we've primed them already of the value, there's a few ways we can connect to it. And this is where we talk about, as you said, I'm in flow. I'm thinking in that moment, do I have time? Yes, because I know the questions are going to ask. So in this situation, immediately, an option would be, it's great that you know them. So can you share them with me? Because one is to support you, I need to know them, so we're on the same page. And also to make sure we're agreeing them. So it's great you've done that homework already and you understand what they are. So can you share them with me? And just be clear, have you got them for your technical, tactical, your physical, your mental, connect, in competition, in practice, and out of, if there's any of those. So what you often get then, and just in my experience, you won't get it all the time, you'll either get someone to say, yeah, great, they're these, and I've never had it where they've had them all and been correct in the alignment of how the coach is looking at them. Most of the time, you'll get a grey response. So then you go, okay, so which ones would be most important? The coach will know based on trends. Okay, well, let's just nail a couple of these. What we end up doing is we ended up then doing the performance profile. But what you've done there's been a dismissive response. I'm using the word dismissive. You could call it many other things, an avoidance.
Yeah.
And instead of now getting aggressive or angry or frustrated, the coach has lapped onto it and gone, that's great, you've done them already. Really important that I understand them and we're synced. So can you share them with me? Now, it may be not in the moment. It may be, can you just share them with me so we can make sure we're aligned to that, so I can support you and can make sure the training plan's aligned to your needs. So that's an example in the moment where if a coach had that extra bit of craft of connecting back to the referencing, if they've done the bit at the beginning right, it's so much easier in that interaction. Even if they haven't done the bit at the beginning right of selling it, they recognize in the performance environment, I need to grow and improve. So if they say, I've already got them, then you're fantastic. That's a door opening right there. So that is an example of the difference between what do I say now and, well, they've opened a door for me to latch in that bandwidth.
So what role then does curiosity and empathy play here? Let's say we've agreed it. We know what the expectations are. We've agreed previously. Yep. We're all in alignment with that. and the
Yeah.
athlete still hasn't completed their performance profile or whatever. What role does empathy, curiosity in? Like that athlete could be dyslexic but hasn't disclosed it and doesn't want to disclose it. They may be resistant to it in ways that they aren't yet consciously aware of. So yeah, do I just jump in and hold them to account for a pre-agreed standard,
Well, don't
or do I
forget.
read it differently?
So don't forget, in that situation, the athlete said, "I've done them already."
Mm,
So they've opened the door. Says, "Great, can you share them?" That's basically what you're doing there. They've
yeah,
opened the door. You've listened. You've been inquisitive. You should have empathy and inquisitive all the time. That should be every time that's
mm,
connected in. If in that moment you're getting interrupted because, "Oh, I'm not sure, I'm not comfortable doing this," and you go, "Great, let's loop in because I really want to understand that." And that's when you have that sit down little chat with them and says, "Okay, so I just curiosity. I just want to understand the value first because it may be they didn't see the value, but they weren't in a position to put a hand up in the dynamics of the team.
yeah,
Maybe that. But what we're saying is then, okay, so the value of it first, and then we get into, okay, so I really want to understand your barriers to it, whatever language you want to go. And that's your inquisitive. So understand, where you're struggling with it, where's the barriers, where's the blockages, because you definitely see the value in it. And I believe in what you're doing. I really think this can add value to where we're going. And then we can find out. But it's understanding, and Alan shared it on a previous, I think 2 or 3 ago. It says just having that permission that what's success for this discussion, having this permission to say, is it okay if we have this? I just want to explore to understand so I can support you. Yes, we're great with that. Okay. So I'm not finding fault here, but this is part of the culture. If we're
yeah,
agreeing something and someone hasn't gone, I don't agree, then there's a cultural issue maybe of we need a space where people can say that so long as they quantify it. If we're growing to that space, then having those one-to-ones and being openly inquisitive to understand, one, the value, and then secondly, where are the barriers?
mm,
Now, if there's no value into it, then we got to get into, okay, well, I have not explained that well enough. Because if we're in a
mm,
performance environment and you don't see the value in us synergizing with where you feel your work on focuses are to improve, to win medals at major championships or make finals, then we've got to have a real discussion to seek to understand your understanding of performance right now.
yeah, yeah. All right, then let's keep moving. So you mentioned the three phases: before, during, after.
Yes.
Afterwards, how to loop back and how to
Yeah.
repair. That's hard.
Yeah. So this happens a lot in corporate business as well. In a lot of my international corporate clients is I've just done a reflection with one of my business clients and I've just shared, okay, share, and I've asked a bunch of questions about reflecting on this month with all the managers. And one of the questions is, have I looped back when there hasn't been an agreement or when there's been a bit of conflict or hasn't gone well? Have you closed the loop? And often, no, I
Mm,
haven't for whatever reason. So closing the loop is twofold. One is we haven't quite got to an agreement or we haven't had that discussion to get to an agreement of action, or we've agreed in principle, but we haven't agreed the UAEs, what that looks like, where the sport is. We don't have time. So we're looping back now, or I didn't know what to say. Let's catch up. That's worth a discussion. So let's not close the door on this. I want to catch up with you on that because it's really important. When you catch up, is just, as we've just discussed there, is understand the value first. What are the barriers? If there aren't any barriers, okay, so how's it going to look for you to suit your needs? It may be a bespoke connection in there, which most athletes do prefer. And then the important fact is what do you agree? You've agreed words, but we haven't agreed words to action. So then we got to agree, okay, so what's that going to look like? Who needs to know it to start with? What's it going to look like for them? How do we want to work together? What support and challenge do you want from me? Do you need from me? And then connect it contextually to where they are. So you know them, you know the trend. So if someone comes into practice and their head's not in the right space because they're not doing any mindfulness 30 minutes before they come in, as an example, they've recognized now this is something that they need to work on because it's impacting their performance, as an example. We've agreed we're going to do it. Have we agreed which tool we're going to use? No. Okay, so which tools are you going to use? I'm not sure. Okay, who can you speak to explore some? Oh, we've got the psych. Okay, when are you going to hook in with her or him? Not sure. Okay, well, let's look at getting that this week. Can you let me know when you got that booked in? And then we can hook in afterwards which one you're going to use. So now we've got a words to action. Once we agreed it and we go, right, I'm going to go for this one. Great. How often before, what opportunities have we got in practice, going to the gym, whatever it may be, tournament to practice these? So we might pick, we've got 6 this week, 6 opportunities. Fantastic. Can we agree, just so I can get how is it going? You just share with me when you share your reflection after the session that how effective or ineffective or your commitment to that element, just that element, that we've got an agreement. So now I've got a point of reference of the words to action. What often can happen is we have a bit of discussion. We nod, we get a lot of nods and agreement, but we haven't done a words to action. We haven't gone, okay, so what's that going to look like for us? When you're going to do it, how, who do you need to speak to, who needs to know, what do you need from me? So that may be, well, if I don't do it, coach, I'm giving you permission to say this to me. We don't want to get there, but that's the point of reference. So now we've done a loop. So now imagine I've got that, him or her has given me the permission, and this is, if I don't, this is what you can say to me, coach. And if you say that, this is what I'm going to do. So now imagine in the moment, we're back in it again. That athlete is not, as agreed. I've got a point of reference now. all I'm going to honor is I'm going to honor my part of the agreement. And now I've got a point of reference. So this is where you can see that loop connects in.
Well, everything seems like every loop with you, Mark, seems to come back to accountability and
clarity
and eliminating the gray and following through.
Yeah, because if you think about it, if somebody is doing something in their behavior, their attitude, their communication, their commitment, their technical or tactical, in a way that's inhibiting them, the team, towards what we've agreed, then your goal as a coach is to influence. Not influence so they're reliant on you for the influence them so they own the change. So all we're looking at there is we need clarity on their understanding. This is where being inquisitive with the empathy comes in, not sympathy. Align to the lighthouse of what we agreed, share with what I'm seeing, connect where the differences are, synergy, action, but the action is with clarity. The action is not just some words, and that's where the fall down is. So we think about it now, it's a lot easier for us to interact in this moment now, because we know what we're going to say and do, because we've already had an agreement within that side of things. So you can see now all of those, when we do them well, it gives us more confidence and competence in the moment. It allows them to have a more ownership and clarity in the agreement, accountability. As soon as we start dropping our side on any one of those 3, now we're losing the effect. So now the chances of actual change is going to regress, because they're just going to revert back, because we're giving them opportunities to revert back. Now, this is not the athlete that we go, guys, do you see the value in this? Yeah, coach, what do I need to do? I'm on it. We're not talking about those athletes. These are the athletes that, through no fault of their own, they might go, I don't like change. This is out of my comfort zone. Oh, I might have to share something I've been hiding that is exposing my knowledge, understanding, whatever it may be. So this is where those 3 phases, we will seek the opportunity, what's appropriate for that athlete in those phases. But if we don't have the agreements with clarity of words to action, it becomes quite difficult then to have the interventions when the discomfort is there, when the mood has gone, when people are not aligning to the agreement. And often because there's no clarity in the agreement with the value.
Yeah, gotcha. All right, Mark, let's move on to our quick tips. So this is helping coaches to overcome resistance, to roll with resistance sometimes, to respond to athletes and situations that is exposing. It's those moments of discomfort. So quick tips for dealing with those moments of discomfort. Go for it.
Tip 1, make sure if you're going to support some change, intervention within an individual athlete or a team, challenge yourself is it needed? Or is it just something I always do? And ask yourself, am I prepared to go through the mud of the difficulty with that athlete or that team when they regress, when they don't commit to it? If you don't get 2 yeses on that, don't waste your time starting it, because it's not going to be effective. So you've got to prime yourself first.
Yeah. Okay, my quick tip is check in with somebody before every practice and game and just describe to them your state. How are you showing up today? So, assistant coach, perfect example. Or if you're coaching a group of adults, could be captain of the team. Maybe if the assistant's not there, or you don't have an assistant. If you're coaching completely on your own and you're coaching youth and you feel like there's nobody to talk to, is there a partner that you can talk to at home, or is there another coach you can just send a quick message to? How can you check in before every practice and game? Because that will raise your awareness of your state instantly, and then that awareness can carry with you into those uncomfortable interactions.
Whenever you're in that interaction where you're deciding, I'm going to step in here, it's discomfort, or you'll get a response and you're thinking, I don't know how to respond to that, make sure you loop back. In that moment, say, let's loop back with this later. Keep the door open, but also then do the step checks. Were they involved in seeing the value of it? Did we agree what that looks like before we started it? And then make sure you close that loop on that process. So never walk away from it. Self questions first, but then always close the loop.
I'm going to loop back to something I said earlier because I do feel it's important. This concept of I'm not here to be right, I'm here to get it right. Contemplate that, reflect on that, scribble that at the top of your next practice plan, and then try to live that, because it's a change of paradigm and mindset that can be really quite freeing. Okay, Mark, going to give you one more plus maybe your bonus one after that.
Okay, I get a bonus this time. This is good.
Yeah.
Put in points of reference to keep them connected to the new concept, new agreement. So you can prime them before in the warm up, whatever it may be. Okay, watch you folks for this. Great. And also connect in. When you see progress, make sure there's a point of reference. So they're recognizing, but also letting them know you're recognizing it. So you're not just doing the fault finding when they don't. We're celebrating when we see progress. That may not be we're nailing it yet, but we're seeing either commitment, a drive, an attitude towards improving in it.
All right, then hit us with your hit us with your bonus.
So the bonus would be prime yourself on having a little checklist of all these agreements you've had with the team or the athletes that you know are these priority ones that are change. Have a checklist and look at the checklist before every practice session to remind you of what to scan for. If there's more than one coach, set roles on who's going to scan for what. But if you don't scan for it, then the chances are, even if it does regress, you're not going to see it. And then what's going to happen is you're going to, without realizing, you're going to let the puppy poo on the carpet. And then when you do step in, when you see it, they go, what's wrong with you? I was all right yesterday. So that consistency of scanning, priming yourself to know what to scan for is so important.
Yeah, no, I love that checklist of prior agreements. I'm definitely going to take that forward. All right, coaches, thanks for sticking with us for episode 43. As always, we're trying to make these practical and useful for you. We've got a couple of guests lined up for our next couple of episodes, so that'll spice things up for you. As always, thanks for your comments. There's a couple on YouTube that I haven't responded to, so I'm going to follow up on those in the next few days. This week, we focused on a topic that came from two different clients of Mark's who got in touch with him this week and asked us to raise this as a topic. So if there's something that you're sitting on out there that you want to be talked about on the next episode, please feel free to get in touch.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Mark.